Right, welcome to the solution to problem 4-2 located on page 145, computing departmental overhead rates. So we've got the White Company, two departments, cutting and finishing. They use a job cost system with a predetermined overhead rate in each department. Cutting department is based on machine hours, finishing department based on direct labor cost. At the beginning of the year, the company made the following estimates, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Compute the predetermined overhead rate to be used in each department. All right, well, that's fairly straightforward. Let's look at the cutting department first. Cutting department uses machine hours, so we've got a total estimated overhead cost for the cutting department of $382,500. Divided by the estimated machine hours of 45,000, giving us $8.50 per machine hour. Finishing department, they do theirs based on direct labor cost. So, not direct labor hours, direct labor dollars. So the overhead they've got is $499,500 divided by direct labor cost of $270. Which gives 185% of direct labor cost for $1.85 per direct labor dollar. Okay, so there's our rates. That was number one. Number two. Assume that the overhead rate you computed in part 1 is in effect. The job cost sheet for job 203, which is started and completed during the year, showed the following. Compute the total overhead cost applied to job 203. Okay. So we have the two departments. So we've got cutting first. And that would be $8.50 per machine hour times 80 machine hours. Which works out to $680. And then finishing, we've got our rate of $1.85 per direct labor dollar times direct labor cost in the finishing department, $150. Gives us $277.50. So the total overhead cost applied then is $957.50. Number 3. Would you expect substantially different amounts of overhead costs to be assigned to some jobs if the company used a plant-wide overhead rate based on direct labor costs rather than using departmental rates? Explain your answers. No computation is necessary. Okay, so the answer to this can be found by staring at the first of the gray boxes in the problem, where it talks about direct labor hours, machine hours, manufacturing overhead costs, and direct labor costs. You would not expect a big difference going from departmental overhead rates to a single plant-wide overhead rate if the departmental rates were kind of homogeneous. In other words, if they moved in the same way. But as we look at the box here, we can see that there are direct labor hours and machine hours we're given data for each of those. And in the cutting department, the majority of its activity happens with machine hours, whereas in the finishing department, the majority of the activity is direct labor hours. Those two are fairly different, and so if they were similar in the way they behaved, then a job that had a lot of one and a little of the other would end up with similar-ish allocation of overhead as a job that had a lot of the other and a little of the one, if you will, right? But that's not the case here. So you get a job that's got a lot of cutting involved, and it's going to have a lot of machine hours, and therefore it is, and obviously fewer direct labor hours. It will have then the overhead that results from this extra cutting will be allocated more accurately because we've got the different rates. So because we've got one that allocates on direct labor hours and one that allocates on machine hours, and the departments are very different, right? One department is almost all machine hours, the other department is almost all labor hours. That allows us to conclude that yes, there would be a significant difference if they went to a single plant-wide overhead rate. All right, that was a long, rambling discussion. I'll read you the textbook solution, and it basically says yes, if some jobs required a large amount of machine time and little labor cost, they would be charged substantially less overhead if a plant-wide rate based on direct labor costs were being used. It appears, for example, that this would be true of job 203, which required considerable machine time to complete, but required only a small amount of labor cost. So the short answer is yes, but see video for explanation. All right, that concludes the problem.